Hi, and welcome to another episode of Haltech Heroes. Today, we're taking a closer look at John's JZA80 Supra circuit car. Now, as everybody will be aware, the mighty Supra houses the 2JZ, one of the best six-cylinder drag racing engines ever made, that hands down. But let's take a closer look and see how you put one of these things round a corner on a circuit and not straight down the drag strip. Well, John, you're here from J&J Motorsport. Mate, thanks so much for showing us over the car today and letting us have a look around.
Yep.
Is this the style of car you guys are normally working on in the shop?
Yeah, we do a lot of JZ stuff.
Right, so 1J, 2J, is it all JZA80 Supras?
No, it's not. We do a lot of conversions and a lot of chases and IS200s and stuff like that.
Just by looking at it, you can see what John's inspiration would have been. The original, the movie car, Fast and Furious, Paul Walker, the hood, the bonnet scoop on it. This is exactly the sort of thing that I think of when I think JZA80 Supra, the absolute original. John's used the Ridox body kit with the top secret wing, which looks awesome, but is also very functional. Being a circuit car, this thing needs to be low, needs to be wide to accommodate the huge track, and it needs the wing for the downforce. So a little bit different to the drag cars, where we're typically trying to get them to be balanced so they don't fly away at the end of the track. This thing, we want as much downforce as we can so that when you put it through a corner at over 200 kilometers an hour, you know it's gonna stick. More hints that this thing sees plenty of circuit racing. The front splitter, the canards, the Raise engineering wheels, which are an absolute standard on all good time attack cars. The Advan A050 tyres, which are a standard in a lot of these series. So all these things combined, the huge track, it's a circuit car. So we're talking about the JZ conversions you do, and you know I'm fishing for the BMW. What's your favourite conversion?
Yeah, well, I've currently got a 2003 BMW X5, which we've put a 2JZ into it, and an A340. And that car's in development at the moment. Hopefully to be hitting the streets soon, but yeah.
It's a pretty rad car because you wouldn't really expect, like that's a real nice four-wheel drive, it's probably pretty luxury inside, but then it's got grunt.
Yeah, that's it. And the standard 4.4 litre that came out with it was fine, but 2J's better.
Well, to your car, it's a long step from going from a stock car to what this is. Tell us a bit about where it started. Was this like your first car, or was this the first shop car, or what happened?
This started out as a smash shell. It was supposed to be built into a street car. As far as all stories go, it never actually made it to the street. We went straight into sort of a race car. Through the process of the build, it just kept getting serious and serious, and we decided that, you know, it was in my interest to build a race car more than a street car. Yeah.
So how long has it taken? How long ago did you pick up a bare shell?
Around about 3.5 years now.
Well, now that we've got the hood open, we're in the business end, and as John says, 2JZ, no shit. This is it, the Toyota 6-cylinder, 3-litre 2JZ, the engine. So, well, probably one of the most popular engines of all time, I would say, within our, our drag racer community. Circuit racing, not so much, but look at all the stuff around this, and it's clearly a circuit car in here. So John's opted to keep his 2JZ as 3-litre, so the original capacity, but he's increased the compression ratio to around 10-1. It's got a set of Kelford camshafts, it's got CP pistons. Over on the hot side here, John's opted for a precision 6466 with an external wastegate. On this particular car, the external wastegate regulates the intake manifold boost pressure to around 32 PSI. So this thing's certainly no slouch. Over on the cold side of the engine here, we've got the air that's been boosted from the turbocharger through the intercooler, up through the beautiful Hypertune throttle body and Hypertune inlet manifold, straight into the engine. We've got a dual feed fuel rail, so the fuel actually gets fed into the fuel rail at both ends. Then a return out the middle of the fuel rail to the fuel pressure regulator, which is referenced across manifold pressure. Look in the description below, there's a really good tech video about how fuel pressure regulators work as well. The engine's got 2000cc injectors that actually feed the engine with E98, so 98% ethanol. You might notice down the bottom here a flex fuel sensor. So the fuel comes out of the fuel pressure regulator through the flex fuel sensor and returns to the tank. Being a circuit car, this car is actually not flex fueled. It runs full time on E98. So the reason for the flex fuel sensor is to measure the ethanol content of the fuel, to make sure that the fuel that's going into the car is exactly what you expect. So you don't need to run the car on flex fuel to have one of these sensors. It is really good just to measure the content, make sure you're getting what you're paying for. The beauty of the ECU knowing the ethanol content is that if you do get a batch of ethanol that has less content that you were expecting or that the car was tuned on, the tuner can pull boost and ignition timing out of the engine and add or remove some extra fuel in order to keep the engine safe. Helping this thing get around the track, we've got some MCA red suspension, which is custom ordered for this particular car for the particular weight, the aero, and the width of the car. So that's quite important to make sure that the thing handles correctly. To get the thing to stop, it's got 8 piston calipers on 2-piece rotors on the front, and it's got a Willwood pedal box. So how that works is typically we've got a brake booster, and then the brake master cylinder with the fluid hanging out around the dump pipe for this very, very hot turbocharger. In this setup, we've actually got the pedals and all of the associated gear inside the car. All that's outside here is we've got 3 reservoirs that are filled with fluid for the clutch and the brakes. So let's go inside and have a bit of a look and see how that works. So now that you've got it looking like this, it's beautiful, the engine's there. What sort of power is it making?
It makes 630 kilowatts at the back wheels. We've got various stages of boost control to turn it down, turn it up as we need.
For sure, so 630 kilowatts is amazing power, and especially in a circuit car because you're not using 630 kilowatts for 9 or 10 seconds. Like, how many laps would you expect to do in this thing on a regular track day?
On a regular track day, we'll do between 20 and 30 laps. We can probably get about 4 or 5 laps a session out of it before it starts to, get a little hot, as these cars do at that sort of power level.
So after you've beaten this thing on the track with 600 kilowatts for however long, what sort of maintenance do you have to do? So when you get it back to the shop?
So when we get it back, we drop the fluids basically, and engine oil, gearbox oil, diff oil, bleed brakes, and just spanner check the car, just so it's right for the next track day or for the next event, and just check tires and that sort of stuff.
I know that you do a lot of testing at Wakefield in this car, so can you tell us, that's a very tight circuit, you've got a big, heavy, hugely powerful car. How do you go getting it around there? Like what are the complexities in getting this thing around that track?
It's very hard on brakes and tyres. We tend to find that the aero on the car isn't as effective at Wakefield Park as it would be as it is at Sydney Motorsport Park. But yeah, we tend to find we go through all the brakes and tyres a lot more. Yeah.
How do you go? What sort of max speeds are you seeing at Wakefield compared to Eastern Creek?
Yeah, so at Wakefield Park we see about 200 kilometres an hour down the main straight, whereas at Eastern Creek we'd see up to 270, 275. We found small changes to aero make a big difference through corners like turn 1. It can reduce corner speed drastically, or make the back of the car want to step out, or make the car want to understeer. It's really like a double-edged sword. The more aggressive the aero, the more drag you create and the more speed you lose. And yeah, it's really a massive learning curve, just feeling out the car and what it wants to do, because at the end of the day it's going to do what it wants to do.
So now's the time that I normally sit in the car and go through it, but in this one there's absolutely no chance I'm going to fit in this cockpit. It's super tight and it's set up in a very specific position so that when John's doing lap after lap after lap, he's super comfortable. So no chance I'm going to get in here. Before, when I pointed out the Willwood remote reservoirs, we've got a twisty knob here. So what this thing does is when we push the brake pedal on the pedal box inside here, it actually pushes the fluid either to the front or the back wheels, depending on the position of the track that John's in. So he might want a bit more front brake bias or a bit more rear brake bias, depending on the track or track conditions. We've got a race pack dash, keep on everything on check, see what's going on. So this is pretty cool. This has got one of the Haltech trim knobs in it. And this thing actually sets the allowable slip on the traction control system that's set up in this car. So the way it works is that we've got maps set up in the Haltech ECU based on this switch position. So at position 1, for example, I know that this car is set up to have no traction control strategy whatsoever. So as this monster 2J comes on boost, the back wheels will spin, it'll make smoke, you can drift it, you can do whatever you want. If you move our switch around to position 2, 3, or 5, let's say 6, for example, I know that's programmed to have a 20% slip allowed. So what that means is that the ECU will allow the rear wheels to spin 20% faster than the front. If it goes over 20% faster, the ECU will inhibit a cut on the engine itself. So we'll drop ignition or fuel or boost or retard ignition timing or a combination of everything in order to limit engine power as a traction control strategy. If we keep going around, we might end up with an allowable slip of 2 or 3%, basically nothing. So that as soon as the thing breaks traction, the engine power will be limited so that you'll make it round the corner safely. It's perfect in wet weather conditions, for example. In the middle here, the standard Getrag gearbox that comes in the JZA80 shares a lot of components with the R34 GTR Skyline and is a super, super strong gearbox. So not really a need to swap it out. This one has had some special attention on the synchros to be able to get it into gear a bit quicker and at a bit higher RPM. Comes down the tail shaft to the standard diff, which is also super strong in these cars. It's got a Cusco center so that it's a little bit more predictable. And back here, battery relocation, pretty straightforward. So it was in the front, but there's no room there anymore. So now it's inside the cabin. To keep John safe in here, it's got an awesome roll cage that's fully integrated everywhere. The whole chassis has been stitch welded to keep it nice and stiff. So between that and the cage, it will make the car very, very consistent and repeatable with the wheel alignment. We've got a very simple fire extinguisher down the back. We've got velo harness and a beautiful velo seat that'll be super comfortable. Other than that, it's pretty simple, and good race cars are simple. Well, John, thanks so much for bringing the car to us today to have a look over. I didn't realize you had an event tomorrow, so I really appreciate it because I know that your time's precious. Mate, beautiful car. Good luck tomorrow.
Thanks for having me.
As always, thanks very much for watching. My name's Scott. See you next time.